Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to WatchYouWant.com. Thanks for logging on. Today, we're looking at two Panerai Radiomir 1940s that speak as one. That's right, you're looking at the PAM00784 identical set. Well, they're not identical in the strictest sense. The PAM00399, which you see here, and the PAM00398, it's nearly twin, actually have the same millesimation in as much as each one comes as part of a series of only 50 sets, each one of which is numbered, for instance, 1 of 100, 2 of 100, and so on, identically on the back of each. Now, while 100 units of each watch were manufactured back in 2012 to launch the Radiomir 1940 case that you see here, the reality is that of those 100, 50 of each were set aside to create 50 boxed sets that are collectively known as the PAM00784. So, that behind us, let's get into exactly what makes both of these watches so special, and that is the Minerva 1617 movement, here doing business as the Panerai OP27. Now, these are exceptional pieces. I can't say enough about how Minerva does things. Just for reference, Minerva is a small company within the Richemont Empire that makes movements in the old style. Watch movements are polished with pieces of local wood that are known to create an exceptional finish. This is the kind of finish that holds up under a loupe. This is Vacheron, this is longer levels of finish. This is not something you associate with Panerai, which tends to be more of a utilitarian, tough, not so much fine, but sturdy and contemporary movement. These days they're mostly in-house, but there's a reason Panerai went deep into its resources within the Richemont group to bring out something that's vintage, special, fine, delicate, and exceptional for the 1940 case debut. Now the Minerva movement, we'll get into that again in a second, but that's really the beating heart inside these watches, and it's what sets them apart from every other Panerai Radiomir 1940 that's come since. But these watches are both the 1940, so it's worth going over what the 1940 brings to the table compared to the previous Panerai Radiomir in 42 or 45 millimeters. First and foremost, the 1940 case is the image of the watch that came out somewhat after the original mid to late 1930s Panerai combat divers. Now, the initial watches had all manner of dials that were sometimes marginally readable, the so-called California dial that included both Roman and Arabic numerals, that included indexes, that was a little crowded. That was considered suboptimal. They went to a more readable dial format with mostly indexes and just a handful of numerals. They went to a different case, whereas the original ones were basically Rolex pocket watch cases with wire lugs for straps sewed on. Now, sewed-on straps and soldered-on wire lugs were a bad combination. Not only did it make the watches difficult to service when replacing the straps, but the wire lugs had a nasty habit of breaking. So for the 1940 case, Panerai engineers redesigned the combat dive watch to have large integrated lugs of the type that you see here. And so the Panerai Radiomir 1940 pays tribute to that watch, the first serious evolution of the Panerai combat divers. Bigger, bolder, easier to read, and more durable. This was Panerai beginning to come into its own between the first Radiomir, or 3646 case as it was known, and the much later, what we would call today the Luminor style with the integrated crown guard. This is sort of a missing link between them. Now this watch is a vintage throwback in many ways. There's that Minerva movement which we discussed a moment ago, and let me just show that again. This is beautiful. Again, just under the loop, you can see the rounded edges, you can see the swan's neck regulator, the perlage of the base plate, the Cote de Genève horizontally across, all the circular, radially grained balance wheel, going train. You can see right here the ratchet wheel, the crown wheel. There's a texture to them, an incredible delicacy and attention to detail that I just can't show on a camera phone, but it's there. So you have that vintage 1617 Minerva movement to start things off. And on the dial, you have what's known as a dirty dial, a simulated radium patina. Just as the vintage Panerai combat divers would age over time, the radium, which was highly radioactive, actually a gamma ray emitter, slowly transforming the dial lume from a sort of sickly whitish green to a deep golden brown, and that's really what Panerai is simulated here with the Luminova coating. Gives you the same luminescence, far less radiation exposure, and a beautiful vintage vibe that's nevertheless very precisely set, isn't crumbling, isn't going to break off and float around inside the dial as you see on a lot of vintage references. It's kind of the best of both worlds. And there's also a gorgeous rose gold hand theme going on here. So in addition to that rose gold, you've got simulated patina, you've got the red gold case, you've got an alligator strap right here with a hand-stitched, again, simulated patina, sort of off-white contrasting thread. Thematically, it's very complete, and I don't know if you can see it here, but not only do you have the rose gold hands, the dirty dial, patina, loom, the strap, the thread, the case, there's also a tobacco-colored dial base in here. That's right, the traditional Panerai sandwich dial, which has the loomed disc underneath a stenciled top disc. That top disc here is actually tobacco colored, beautifully complements the hands, the loom, and the red gold case. And I will emphasize that is a red gold case, not rose gold, not pink gold. It's what's known as a 5 NPT red gold alloy, far richer, more lustrous, has a much more pronounced red tone than those other two, the rose and the pink. Now right here, the Panerai PAM00399, very similar with a couple of key distinctions. First, obviously a steel case. This is the 1940 case in both watches. Bigger, 47 millimeters, also more highly contoured on the side. This watch has a lot more compound curves to it than the original Radiomir, and it also has a convex sort of cambered bezel that plays very differently from the original Radiomir. So between the lugs, the case, the curvatures, and the bezel, topped by a vintage-style acrylic plexi, the 1940, in this case, is very, very different. Plays differently, still wears well on the wrist, still has that cushion profile, but it has much more of an upscale allure to it. It's really become more of a vintage throwback and a premium vintage throwback at that. This doesn't feel déclassé, it doesn't feel like a diving tool whatsoever. Although the essential style is preserved, the 1940 plays as a new upscale watch. Equally at home at the dinner table or, you know, the boardwalk cafe, this is a great watch, and in fact, the fact that they're sold together gives you even more options. But you have the calfskin, which plays as a little bit informal. You've got the alligator, a bit more formal. You've got the rose gold, a bit dressier. You've got the steel, again, a bit more casual. The steel does have a black dial, that's important to note, so that plays a little bit different too. Both cases identical, but the material, the aesthetic treatment, the straps are different, down to the use of an Ardian buckle and a deployant clasp here. This is a complete boxed set, available from watchyouwant.com, the PAM00399 and 398, doing business as the PAM00784 collectively, come with the entire boxed set, all special edition manuals, certificates, the elaborate dual watch box, all accessories, hang tags, movement stickers, you get it. With the PAM00784 from watchyouwant.com, you can hook yourself up with one of the most original, most exotic, and most coveted, not to mention rarest, of Panerai Special Editions, the 2012 PAM00784. They made 50 sets, identical millesimation, full box and accessories. Check it out on our website, watchyouwant.com. These watches present as new with everything you would have picked up when you bought this boutique exclusive at the Panerai boutique back in 2012. I'm confident that when you see this matched boxed pair, you will know you've got the watches you want.